What's happening, folks? Welcome back to Celtic Fans TV. It is time to look ahead to Thursday's Europa League clash against Real Betis in Seville. I'm joined tonight by Alex, who's better known as Euro Expert. Alex, thanks for taking the time to talk to me, mate.
Oh, that's no problem. Happy to be on. I think I messaged you privately that I think as someone who likes to keep up with all the leagues, your channel's really good for helping me keep up with Celtic. So it's pleasure's mine.
Thank you, man. Thank you. So Real Betis then, I watched them last night against Granada. They got a 2-1 victory. That's all I've seen of them this season. So before we come to talking about last night's game in any detail, what can you tell us about where Betis are at and how they've started the season?
Yeah, that's a good question. So Betis, they got their first win of the season last night against Granada. They've started a little slowly, a bit of a interesting team. So the manager is the well-known Manuel Pellegrini. He took over shortly after Quique Setién left for Barcelona. If anyone remembers that 8-2 loss, which was funny. But Setién was a really well-regarded manager. The reason Barcelona brought him in during his time at Betis, he's got these players well-trained. And Pellegrini, for anyone who hasn't looked at him too much in depth, and maybe they just saw his failure at West Ham, Pellegrini is a really successful coach, and he likes to play. He's very well prepared, not Bielsa level where he's a bit insane, but when you guys play Celtic, when they play Celtic, they'll be well prepared. And I think the best thing to talk about as well, just briefly mention, is if you're wondering any star players, the man you should watch on Thursday besides Celtic players is Nabil Fekir, because my God, he is brilliant.
Yeah, I think he's the name that stands out to all the Celtic supporters from the Betis team. Well known from his time at Lyon as well. The Betis obviously come out of pot 3 in this group. It's actually a really tough group for everyone involved. I think Celtic coming out of pot 2. Do you think, with the quality they have coming for one of the top 5 leagues, that they fancy their chances to get through this group stage?
It's a good question. See, I think the thing that might get them through it is Pellegrini, but I mentioned Fekir and how good he is. There's some issues going on. So this is the club that also sold Emerson Royal to Barcelona. They had a buyback clause, and obviously he's gone to Tottenham. They've brought in 3 right-backs this transfer window, and none of them are very good. I mean, the most well-known would be Hector Bellerin, who might start against Celtic. But as well, their striking options, they've just brought in on loan Willian Jose. For those who watch the Premier League, might know him of Wolves, or for guys who like European football, you might know him of Real Sociedad. And they brought him in because their main striker, Borja Iglesias, he's contributed to these 11 goals or 12 to 11 goals over the past 2 seasons. Very ineffective. I think that's one of the big weaknesses about Betis. And I think I'd be happy about from a Celtic thing is they're not very lethal finishers, I'd say. Fekir and Canales, which you said you saw the game on Monday night. I'm sure you saw Canales' goal. There's a couple of players in here that are really talented, but generally, I think this is maybe I think Celtic and Betis, I can't put too much between them.
They do look a strong team on paper. They lined up 4-2-3-1 last night. Do you think that's the same formation they'll go with on Thursday?
Yes, I believe so, yeah.
Mark Bartra obviously went off injured last night. So how do you think that leaves them at the back? They've obviously got Victor Ruiz at centre-half as well. Do you think they're strong defensively?
They're pretty good defensively So here's the thing. This is the kind of advice I would have had for Celtic. It's that really when you're attacking Betis, you want to get at them. So Bartra out could be a big blow. I mean, I think he's a name most people know generally. But this is a guy who's been coached by Guardiola, Villanova, Pellegrini, Luis Enrique, Pep Guardiola, thinking Carlo Ancelotti, I believe, as well. But basically, Bartra out is kind of one of their best passers out of the defence, and also probably the most talented defender. So I think if Betis sit back, if Celtic can't catch them on the break, that's when you might find some difficulty. But generally their goals, especially this season, they've come when the defence is trying to get back, and they're very narrow, this defence, you'll kind of see on the pitch. And so it's going to be a little easy to play through them. And like I said, the right-back slot, I'd target. The left-back one's a bit of an interesting one, not to offer on too much, but they've got a guy in who's fairly rated by some people, Juan Miranda. He was on loan there last season. He's come out of the La Masia, Barcelona's academy. I think he's an okay player, but he's definitely got room to improve. So I'd say in defense, maybe I know I mentioned the attack can be a bit, ineffective, but I say the defense, that's where you can definitely get him the most.
Yeah, last night against Granada, I thought they dominated the game, but they looked most lethal on the counter attack. So, do you expect them being at home on Thursday to really try and dominate the ball?
I think so. Still, yeah, they were quite high in their possession numbers last season under Pellegrini. And Pellegrini is a coach who likes to play a high line. So even though he knows these limitations, he's trying to take this squad in this direction. So I think they will go to try and dominate the ball. So that could play in Celtic's favour, depending on how. I'm a big fan of Kyogo Furuhashi. I'd love to see him start.
I think we would all love to see him start, but he's injured, so he's definitely out of this one, which I think is a massive blow for us in terms of posing these European teams a different threat. It will be Albion Ayeti that starts up front for Celtic. I don't know if you know much about him from his time at West Ham.
I mean, at West Ham, I think he was there in the port. Ironically, he was there when Pellegrini was there. It just didn't really click, did it? But I saw he started the season well, wasn't he? He scored. It was his first start in the league at the weekend, wasn't he? He scored 2, didn't he?
Yeah, he scored 2. He didn't play. I think he had 15 touches in the whole game, and he managed to score 2 goals. So he wasn't involved a lot in the build-up. But it's definitely a huge blow for us having Kyogo Furuhashi injured. How do you think the game will go? Do you think Celtic, I mean, traditionally, I don't know how often you've watched Celtic away from home in Europe, but we always get flustered. We always have spells of like crazy defensive errors. And I would expect us to be under pressure at some point in this game. Yeah,
I'm a good friend of Chris Hamill's, and every single year he's tweeting about disappointment in Europe. So I've kept an eye on them more recently, but I'm aware of the struggles. But I think Betis well, I'm not trying to point them as easy, but they're possibly an easier team than someone like Bayer Leverkusen or even Ferencvaros, just by the fact that I think it's the first time for a while they've qualified for Europe, but they got 6th last season, and I think the squad's a bit thin. I mean, at the wings at the moment, they have a player who I really like called Diego Llanes, but he's not playing at the moment. They're playing, I think it's Rodrigo Sanchez, who did score a really nice goal on Monday. But I don't think, put it this way, I think if Pellegrini had the choice to back his team in the league or the Europa League, I think he'd pick the league every single day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we've seen that in recent seasons. Celtic actually against teams like Lille and Rennes, who are maybe not like seasoned teams year in and year out in Europe, who have managed to get some success against, and even Lazio a couple of years ago as well. You mentioned Rodri there, who scored last night, and Christian Teo, who will be known to most people as well from his days at Barcelona. They both play on the wings. Do you think they're likely to be a big threat for Celtic? I like the look of Rodri last night. He reminds me almost of a Bernardo Silva type player.
Yeah, Rodri's the one where we know a little about, like not so much about, because he didn't play too much last season. Generally last season it was Joaquin, I believe, who's now 40 years old. I think he's still in the squad. It's crazy, that guy.
Came on last night, didn't he?
Yeah, it's mental. But I'll go into Fekir now. Fekir's definitely the one to really watch out for. Kind of likes to drift to the right-hand side, and I mean, last season I've got some numbers with me, I think, because he was in the top 3 or 4 in La Liga for shot creating actions, which meant basically a lot of players running through him, and he was one of the most creative players. Generally, some people would sometimes call him a bit like inconsistent, but I mean, one thing that people are a bit wary about him is also his injury record. I mean, it's slightly relevant to the Celtic game, but it's something to clear up, because we might remember him especially because he was very close to joining Liverpool. But apparently on Liverpool's end, they said they had a look at his knee in medical and said, you can get back to France. And Fekir, to his credit, he said, I'm completely fine. I've been tested by separate people. And he's only missed 7 games since joining Betis in 2019 for injury. So Fekir is a lot more agile than you'd expect. And I think when I do my sort of GAT reports on teams, when I'm coming onto channels like this, I generally like to go into a lot of detail. And for strength, I was tempted to just put Fekir. But at the same time, Canales, he scored a brilliant goal.
That was a great goal last night.
Yeah, for anyone who didn't see it, he was He received the ball it was sort of just in the opponent's half. And he turned, it was very late on, and just drove towards goal, just under so much pressure, and made a tight finish. Now, Canales, he created a huge amount of big chances last season. He does take set pieces, but I'm interested to see where he plays against Celtic, because he's been fielded defensive midfield, and next sometimes to William Carvalho or Gonzalez, I believe. The thing about him is I'm not sure. He feels a bit of a liability at defensive midfield. He also likes to shoot from range. So even though you saw that goal last night, I wouldn't be too terrified of him.
Do you think he is going to start? Because obviously we've seen Guido Rodriguez and Carvalho in midfield last night with Fekir ahead of them. Carvalho and Fekir both came off around about the hour mark. So do you think Canales will start this game?
It's a tricky one. I think he's one of the most experienced players, and I do think he will. He's one of the better performing players there, but he might be a bit more, just because it's in Europe, he might be told to be a bit more defensive, especially because you're at home, though. That's why I think he will start. Maybe if this is away, then Pellegrini might make a bit of a boring but tactical change. But I think we could see Canales start. And
do you think, you mentioned earlier on, Betis not really that experienced in European terms. Do you think they might make some changes? It was only last night they played, so they've only had 3 days before this game. Do you think they might make some changes? Maybe rest a couple of the bigger players?
Potentially, I think. The interesting thing will be to see who plays up front, really. If Willian Jose plays, I think, because he only got 45 minutes last night. But as I mentioned, they've kind of been so ineffective on the striking position that I think Pellegrini, that's the thing, he's really battling in his head of who to start up front. But I think he could guarantee players like Fekir starting. I think you'll get Juanmi starting as well, the 28-year-old Spaniard who's been in and out of the side really over the past year, but he started pretty well. But yeah, I think those are the main ones who they might get. I think the better way to sum it up would be that maybe if this is a couple games into the Europa League in Europe, maybe they would rest them. But generally, when it's when it's a big European tie, I've noticed with other teams as well, they always like to start big, because Betis, even though they've got a bit more limited experience in Europe, they've still got high ambitions. Like, they've played very well over the past couple of decades, but I think that's why they'll have high ambitions and probably start this game going for it, and then Pellegrini will see how the campaign goes, and maybe after 2 or 3, 4 games, I'll be like, okay, we're gonna rest some of my better players.
Yeah, okay. Last night they did dominate, particularly in the first half, but they did allow Granada back into it, particularly after the equaliser. And Granada had chances, even though on the balance of play, I think Betis deserved to win it. Granada did have chances. So is there any other weaknesses potentially that we haven't covered that you think Celtic could get at?
That's a good question. Like I said, I think I've kind of covered it generally, but really I think the best way would be to hit him on the counter-attack. It's generally, as well, because their defence it's not extremely talented, and that's not an insult necessarily, but it's more, they're the sort of defence where if you go at them directly, you should be able to create something. But if you let Betis get back into their structure, because Pellegrini, as I said, he's very well prepared, and he's such an experienced man that he will set this team up at the back defensively well. But if you can catch him in transition, I think that's really where the big weakness is. Like I said, I think Leverkusen is really the team you want to watch out for, and Ferencváros is the team that will be very well drilled. But Betis, they're sort of in the in-between stage. So that's why I think I'm a little bit more hopeful for Celtic. I think you could get something. Maybe not a win away in Seville. I've read as well, I don't think your fans are going to be able to travel to the game, or it might be very, very limited. But I still think you could potentially get a draw at least.
Yeah, I think there will be some fans there, but they're not an official away support in terms of ticket allocation. Yeah, Ferencváros were familiar with them. They put us out of the Champions League qualifiers last season. And Leverkusen, we all know about the strengths of Leverkusen, but that was actually going to be my final question. How do you think the game will go tomorrow? I think a draw for Celtic would be a fantastic way to start the group, considering that we're away from home and given our record away from home.
I think especially because of the days in between, I think it could be a draw. I don't expect it to be too many fireworks unless Celtic can really execute a strong game plan and get Betis on the counter, but like you mentioned, they've not had much rest, and I think the squad's a bit thin. I think Pellegrini, Pellegrini would be too sad with a draw. I don't think so. I think it could be quite a settled game. I think if you're going to ask me for a prediction, I'd probably say 1-1.
Good answer. I'm happy with 1-1. That's it for the preview. Like this video, comment with your own thoughts below. Let us know how you think the game will go. I'll be back tomorrow with the starting 11 prediction as well, so join me for that. And then we'll have all of the normal match day content on Thursday too. So thanks for watching. Cheers.